to the Trinity Force Podcast. Yo, it's that Triforce cast beaming straight to your home. Grab a beer so we know Pone ain't drinking alone. Send an email, a quick tweet, just pick up the phone. Leave a message, hit the beep if you're a creep, watch your tone. Discuss the meta game, patch notes, whatever helps your stats most. Obi-Pone Kenobi is your last hope to snatch gold. So grab your headphones and join in the fun. We'll try and force in some jokes and some cringeworthy puns. Yo, we can make it together, people. Trinity Force Podcast. These boys are second to none. Now that's the end of the intro. It's time we begun.
Hello, everybody out there in podcast land. It's episode 495 of the Trinity Force Podcast. I am back in the hosting chair. And you know what's great about Louisiana? Drive-through daiquiris.
Oh yes. You did tell us about that.
Oh shit!
Right before the show.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to let him, deliver that to the listeners.
It tastes like brain freeze at 151. Oh god.
P.S. It's $4.96.
But it was a deal.
No, 151, as in one. The grain alcohol. 151. Like it hurts. Ow. Oh.
Yeah, but the episode is $4.96.
It is $4.96.
Not the alcohol.
Damn it! Why didn't I way back in episode 151 say we were sponsored by 151? That would have been hilarious. I could have been drinking shots of 151.
You're the worst. That's why.
I don't think they would have given you anything for free. I think they would have just been like, "Oh, sweet, somebody's out there advertising us for free. That's awesome."
Anyway, speaking of advertising, BuddhaBoxers.com/T-Force. No code. They're really good boxers. I wore them all weekend flying on an airplane. They're phenomenal. Go check them out. Buddha Boxers. BuddhaBoxers.com. BuddhaBoxers.com/T-Force. Get yourself some really good boxers. Guys, we're looking for your feedback. Feedback at TrinityForcePodcast.com. You can use that as either a feedback line, or you can use that as a way to ask us questions, or you can use that as a way to do anything else. You want to bitch at us, you want to praise us, send us an email. We got some praise for this last Juggle episode. We liked it. We got some questions going forward about Zoe and whatnot. We're very happy to get those. And it's been
Zoe.
great.
It's not Zoe.
I know.
Why is it Zoe?
You know why I said Zoe? You want to know why I said Zoe? Because 4 Words last week was saying Zoe the entire time. And
They were wrong,
they were.
too.
And no, I wanted
It's
to
a pretty simple name.
No, you're not
to
letting me
pronounce.
explain. Because they had a listener that listens to us too get triggered every time they said Zoe, and so I purposely said Zoe just to trigger the guy.
I'm not going to do that.
I don't think you purposely said so. I don't think you did.
All right, because I didn't have a very good explanation for it. They came rolled right off the tongue, right?
Right? What?
Dude, this daiquiri is
Sure.
perfect because I can just every time I look at you, I'm just gonna go.
Is that gonna be the new slow blink?
Yes. Just take. They can't tell I'm taking a drink though. So
I haven't.
So anytime you hear a long pause in the
for a long
podcast.
time. But I've been doing this for like a year again, over a year now.
yeah.
After my sabbatical there, not once have I been accused of a slow eye roll or eye blink.
I forgot about that.
I did too until you talked about your little slurp.
That's funny. All right, so I have one more thing to talk about before we jump into the topic tonight, guys. As you know, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/T-Force Network. However, as of January 1st, our Patreon is changing. So anybody who's out there at the $10 tier, I want you guys to be aware of what's going on. So I'm going to start at the beginning. There's still a $1 tier. All that is a thank you and a note on our wall. The $5 tier will have a new podcast added to it. It's going to be hosted by Heartless Beaver and any other guests we can bring on. It's going to be more of like a State of the Meta podcast, but we're also going to bring on guests to talk about in-depth strategy and stuff that we may not have enough time to cover on Proper, or stuff we have covered on Proper in the past but want to get into more in depth, and like a place that you guys can go and find these episodes very easily, right? Because they'll be on Patreon.
Yeah, it'll be good to get you ready for the ranked season, and then keep you updated as the patches roll out. Right. We'll try to bring on some like high level players as well. I've already got a couple in mind, kind of lined up. So yeah, it's gonna be sweet.
So that's at $5. You get one podcast. Now, $10 is still going to have the Champions League podcast, but you'll only be getting one Champions League podcast a month. going forward as of January, because so you'll still be getting 2 podcasts a month. You'll be getting a general podcast and you're getting a Champion Select podcast. Now that's just for January, and probably February we'll start rolling around some changes for replay reviews, and potentially maybe I'll decide if Mitch comes back that he wants to do it, we'll throw another Champion Select podcast in at 15 or 20. We'll figure that out, but more changes are going to be coming, just so you guys know. But that's starting in January. $5 is a podcast, $10 is a podcast. Everything else stays the same for now, but we're going to keep rolling out changes. So if you're at the $10 tier, keep that in mind. If you don't like it, drop to 5, stay at 10, do what you got to do. And we're going to see how that rolls for a couple months. Then we might, switch it up from there. So thank you guys for supporting us, and thank you guys for, working with us as we try to switch some things up and see what we can do for the new year. Other than that, that's it. That's Patreon. I've spent 6 minutes and 18 seconds doing intro stuff, and that's far too long before we get into discussion. So we're going to talk tonight. After last week, we had some people email us and say they really liked our jungle discussion, and we decided, we're just going to move forward because we have nothing else to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about supports, an in-depth guide to supports.
Heyo!
Yeah.
The second best role on the Rift.
We have done top lane previously, just so that's out there. We have done top lane with Marine, and did we have one other person, or was it just Marine that night?
Punch was on.
I was there. Yes.
Expert.
Santana might have been on that one too.
Was it Santana or Shira? Maybe both.
It was Santana. I remember listening to that one. It was Santana and Todd and Punch.
Yeah. So that was a really long time ago. We've done top. We've now done jungle. We are about to do support. We will find a way to do mid. I'll have to find like a.
That's gonna be tricky.
We don't play mid.
We could bring on a guest or something for mid.
Our roster is sadly bereft of mid laners right now.
So
each of us can play like one hero mid. That's about it. Combined, maybe we can form one mid player.
Yeah, right.
You'd be a serviceable mid together.
It's somebody that flexes in
control part of the mechanics, I'll
Adam just plays in mid lane.
Adam just does the mouse. Someone else does the keyboard.
You don't want me to do the mouse because I'd never get back to base.
And then one person in the back calling the shots.
So what is it about support? I don't remember how we started the jungle one, but I'm just going to leave it on the table here. What is it about support that people, why are we playing support? What is it about support? What is support?
Yeah, what attracts you to the role, basically?
I have as my first point here, the primary goal for support is to act as a foundation for your carries, and honestly, that's what I enjoy about playing the role. I like putting my team in a position to do really well. I feel really good when I do those types of things. I don't necessarily I feel good if some other stuff happens and then I get a kill, but only because nobody else on the team was going to be able to pick that one up. But by and large, I get a lot more satisfaction from setting my team up to succeed than I do from running around and getting all the kills on the map myself.
I like that. I was, during my short, I'm back to League, right? I'm back in full time. I know. I saw Punch this weekend. I'm just going to bring this up real quick before we can jump back in here because I have a point to this. Punch was screaming about how much he hates 80 carry this weekend, and he finally realizes that I'm
very fun right now.
A big baby bitch. But yeah, I'm getting back into the game because I think after playing a bunch of heroes, it's time to finally jump back in here. But I was playing some supports over there, and I get it, Dom. When you're playing, I would scream at my buddy. I'd be like, "You're a fast boy! Oh man, now you're a pig boy!" Polymorph somebody or stuff like that. And when you kind of do that with friends, you get it. People kind of get into it and they have a lot of fun. But it was a lot of fun just kind of propping people up and telling them, this is I'm helping you. Right? I'm healing you. You can stay in the fight a little longer. And then as you get to know your support a little more, you can stay in the fight just a little longer. You can really stand on the outskirts or really on the tiptoes in the middle of the fight because you have that person that always has your back. And I really appreciate people playing support, people who play this type of support characters, because I understand how much fun it can be when you're in this thick of things. Those clutch heals.
Yeah, I mean, sort of reorienting back to the support, you're the foundation for your carry, but you depending on the champion, you're going to be doing that in different ways. Soraka is different from Zyra, who's different from Alistar, and Morgana is in some way kind of like a combination of the three, or can be if she wants to. So they're all you're doing things in very different ways, and part of being successful at support is really just finding the style that you like to play. Generally speaking, I prefer to play like the engaging type of supports. I love playing Alistar. Everybody knows that. Rakan is really becoming one of my favorite champions. I like playing Leona. I don't love her the same way that I love Alistar, but she's doing functionally similar stuff, so I enjoy playing her. I will play Janna because I believe in sort of having all of the having each different
winning, right?
Well, I like winning, but I also believe that like you should have kind of one of each support, or at least one of each support, available to you, so that you can work around your team comp, because you're not always going to be first pick, and your team's not always going to pick around the fact that you're hovering Alistar, or you're hovering Alistar but you're fourth pick, and then the opponent team picks a comp that's just like Alistar is really not going to be able to do a whole lot for you there, and so you're better off picking somebody with like heavy disengage or something. So I can play Janna, and I don't mind doing it and everything, but I'm never going to I very rarely get excited to play Janna or something like that. Or anytime I decide to play Soraka, I'm always like, okay, well, it's good that I know how to do this, but I don't love this, and I'm like not gonna do it again for however many games. And then there are certain champions that I just don't take to. I really don't play any of the hook champions very well at all, despite many efforts at trying to get good at them. I don't know how much time I put into Thresh to try and get there, and Blitzcrank is even somehow worse for me. I can do like a passable Nautilus, but that's the extent of it. They're just not champions that I jive with. And so finding the play style that works for you is another key thing to really get into support.
And I have to say, a common misconception about support is that it's one of, or probably the hardest role to carry from, or that it's not fun to play, or that when you get autofilled to support, you should just pick a damage champion, because that's your most likely way to carry, and that all those things are just not true. What is true is that the supports get significantly less gold than every single other member on your team, by default. No, maybe not every game, but most games.
Sorry,
it's a fine. It's fine. It happens.
Most games, the support's going to have the lowest income. So the way you influence the game is different than other characters. So you're not going around looking for kills. You're looking to place vision, make smart decisions, peel for your team when they get into trouble. Make sure that you guys are set up to basically make plays and push towards objectives, which is what everyone should be going for, not just kills. That's just like a medium through which you obtain the objectives. So, I just have to say, you can carry from support, and it gets a lot easier carrying from support the higher elo you get, because your teammates will be able to take advantage of your skills. So just because you're a low elo support, don't get down on yourself. You can still hard carry games. You just have to figure out, like Dom said, what's your playstyle, what do you like playing? And then no other role has a bigger influence than support in champion select. You're the one who gets to tie your team together. Just like Dom said.
Anecdotally, it felt like Gold 3 was the tipping point where my teammates regularly started to understand and value the things that I was doing, versus maybe one of them gets it or none of them, or people just not paying attention to wards and meaningfully use all that stuff. And we'll get to more of that later, but it did seem like Gold 3 was the tipping point.
Let's take wards and vision and all that kind of stuff, wrap it up in a little ball, and throw it over our shoulder for a moment, because what I really want to talk about with supports is most people listening to this, most people playing this, really focus and hone in on laning phase, because a lot of solo queue games are done once laning phase is over, right? That's what decides the game. For most people that are below, we'll say platinum, laning phase decides the game. So something that I really, really like about supports, and that this tells me the support knows how to play their role, is the fact that a support understands zoning and understands that they dictate the lane. The AD carry, generally speaking, does never dictates how the lane goes, unless they're phenomenally better than the enemy AD carry. Really, supports in their positioning and what they're able to do in lane is really what dictates how the lane moves. So I really like to see it that way.
That's partially true. The AD carry does play a role in that. If an AD carry is playing really far back, playing overly cautious, or is just inclined to be really safe, the support can only zone so much before they're just going to start taking a lot of unnecessary harass damage coming back at them that you're in turn not punishing the enemy for. So like the idea behind zoning basically is that you have this every champion has this area of influence, which is their maximum possible action range. And that's going to vary based on champion. Blitzcrank has a very, very different threat zone than Soraka does. But for every champion, it's basically the range of their most threatening ability or ability combo plus the range of flash. That's their zone. You can also add the entire range of the brush. And there's Shirelia years ago recorded an excellent zoning tutorial video that I still recommend. I mean, you will see League in its infancy. You will see like brushes that no longer exist. You're going to see the map in its original state. Like, just for example, there used to be brush at the front of or at the entrance to the dragon pit.
You're talking pre like season 1 though.
Yeah, we're like, this is super old, but everything that she's talking about in there is still relevant today. So if you have the time, go and watch it. It's like a 10 or 15 minute video tops, but it's totally worth watching. But to quick over the concept, basically it's your most threatening ability or ability combo plus the range of flash. So for Thresh, it's flash plus his hook. For Alistar, it's flash plus headbutt pulverize, in theory. That's the maximum range there. For Rakan, it's, the E range to one ally, the E range to a second ally, then he would cast R, then he would flash, then he would W. So you're talking about a huge range, and it's even longer if Xayah is thrown into the mix there. But these are the ranges that you need to understand, and that's why it's also important to understand power spikes, because Rakan can't do all that stuff in the early game because he only has one ally, but he's incredibly potent once a jungler comes running in.
Yeah, so, and just to sort of finish that point off, like the whole idea behind keeping them outside of that range is if they do step in the range, you are going to be able to deal more damage to them than they are to you. That's basically the simple fact about it. Either you're going to chunk them or kill them. If you walk into range of Zyra's trap or her root or Thresh's hook or Rakan's W or Alistar's EQ combo, every champion has an ability like that. So when you are in a more powerful position than your opponent, and that could be more minions, there are a number of scenarios, more levels, better summoner spells, or more combat summoner spells, more health. Any of these things can trigger you into the position of power in the 2-on-2, and then you have to take up the zone control, like Dom was saying, and then you keep them at your maximum range. And the reason you do that is to keep them off creeps, keep them off experience, keep them off gold, and threaten to kill them, essentially.
Punch.
Yeah, I was going to jump in, but B actually ended with a very strong point. What I was going to say initially is that when I think of the payoff for a zone, particularly as support, I don't see the payoff as a huge chunk of damage. I see it more as setup. The support is setting up, and it's not always a setup for the AD carry, but a lot of the time it's also a setup for a jungle gank, where if they walk into your zone of influence and you're able to engage on them with the support of your choice, you are setting up that jungler to come running in and then get a gank on the enemy. Or if it's just you and the AD carry, you're getting an advantage in a trade. You immediately have that trade advantage. And then that's when the chunk damage comes in, and that causes the enemy to fall back and give you the lane control.
I mean, and the flip side is that you're limited to the cooldown of your most threatening ability. The moment Blitzcrank casts his hook, if he misses, he is no longer threatening for the duration of that cooldown. And so that is when you need to decide, okay, what are we going to do? Like, are we going to punish them for this? Or are we going to try to do something? We can zone them off for, 12 seconds or however long the cooldown is at rank 1, or even in the early game. It's so there are still trade-offs to having these really powerful zoning abilities, because if they're not available, then you can't do anything. And similarly, that's why it's important, like, to have some measure of restraint. You shouldn't be throwing hook on cooldown. You shouldn't be trying to Alistar combo or Leona snare on cooldown, because at a certain point you're going to miss, and then they're going to do something to you as a reprisal. And then B, you're more threatening when they think those abilities are up. So if they don't know that you blue flash doing something else, like they are still going to have to sit at, ability range plus flash, even if you don't have that available to you. And that's why it's really important to ping summoners.
Yeah, Blitzcrank is a good point. That power seesaw that I was talking about on which 2v2 has the stronger sort of skirmish potential or fight potential can change with just one ability being down. And for those characters who have a major crowd control ability or signature ability like your Blitzcranks, your Threshes, and your Nautilus, those kind of characters, as soon as their hook is down or their crowd control move is down, the seesaw flips and the other team now has the advantage. So you have to be careful. Like if you're asserting your, if you try to assert your dominance on them by zoning them off and then you miss your abilities, you have to realize that you're no longer the dominant party in that lane now, and you can't stand in the position you are, or else you're going to get counter-engaged on. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're looking at the potential 2v2, but a lot of it is just understanding what limits certain champions have.
And sometimes it's not necessarily like a threatening ability. Sometimes it's baiting out Janna's shield or Braum's shield, for that matter. If you can bait out Braum, if you can bait out all of those key abilities and really take no reprisal for it and everything, then you're setting yourself up to either zone them out in a meaningful way or like get in there and kill them. Because those are all really, really important damage, deflectors, and you got the support to waste them for whatever reason.
And this is also why you'll see a lot of good Blitzcrank players. They don't fish a lot with their hook. Mm-hmm. They save it the majority of the time, and if they want to be aggressive, they'll actually just walk at the enemy AD carry and say, I don't need to hook you. I can just chase you away from your creep wave. Now you've got nothing to hide behind, and I can hook you now, or if I get close enough, I can knock you up and then hook you in and try to run when you try to run away after that. And that's why it's mostly that pressure beforehand of, look, I don't need to throw out the hook because I'm threatening just standing here. I can walk at you and I can force you to run in a certain direction. And that's what Blitzcrank is good at.
And that's one of the reasons why it's so important for most supports, to be playing, at minimum, like the enchanters are going to be probably playing in parallel or a little bit in front of their AD carry, but because they don't have the same type of threatening abilities, they're not getting way up there. But poking and engaging supports, you want to be playing up. You don't want to give the opponent the opportunity to get in there and harass your AD carry.
But yeah, by that same token, like when we're talking about the zones of influence and sort of where you can threaten, if you're playing Janna with, let's just pick an aggressive carry like a Draven, you aren't really the point of power the Draven is. So the point where basically his auto attack range with your shield, that's where the opponents can't step into if you guys are in the pole position in the lane. You understand? Like it's not necessarily you, depending on the character you play.
Yeah, I guess I overlooked something in the course of writing this. Anytime you get into a skirmish, you should always be focusing the AD carry. You can make an argument that Soraka opponents would be the one time you want to focus the support, but even then, in the early game, the cooldown on her heal is low enough that you should probably just be focusing the AD carry and removing that champion from the game. But that's the one time where it's like it's debatable who you should focus on. But otherwise, like always focus the AD carry. Always focus the AD carry. The moment you start focusing the support for any other reason than they are the closest, like they're the only target that you can hit, is the moment where you're going to start losing those trades.
Yeah, the only time you focus supports is basically when it's a Thresh and your jungler's ganking, or if they don't have their flash and the enemy AD carry does. Like if it's a guaranteed kill, right?
So to go back to the Soraka point real fast, because I guess I can't get a point in. Otherwise, we all like to talk. It's all right. It's all right. I wish I had it, but anyway, there's numbers out there that actually says that when it comes to poking down or engaging on, besides like the level 1 W or whatever, maybe even level 1, Soraka doesn't have W. She's going to start Q in lane. Then she's going to pick up W after the fact. But after Soraka puts a couple points into W, we're talking about level 5-ish, it's actually easy. It's better to engage on the Soraka. So she's like the only person there that it's better to engage on the support than it is engage on the AD carry, because you leave a Vayne alone in lane, and you don't engage on her while pre-6, she's just going to go ahead and destroy whoever she's attacking, which is assuming the other AD carry. So it's something that also bothers me when people come and gank the lane. Everyone else always tries to jump on the support because they're lagging behind. But if you can jump on the AD carry and demolish them, that's where it's want to be, and that's what supports want to do. They want to protect the AD carry. So giving your life up for a gank is another thing that supports should selflessly do as well.
The support is very rarely going to turn turn something into like a 1-for-1 trade. But the AD carry is very capable of doing that if you focus down the support. The AD carry could very realistically kill the kill the enemy support. They could kill you if you are the support and everything. The enemy AD carry could very easily kill you, and then instead of going 1-0 and you're walking out ahead, now you have traded kills and you no longer have a lane advantage.
Yeah, I just like to Adam made a good point, but if you're you should be sacrificing your life if you can, because you're worth less than them, because by the token of them being alive, they get to accumulate gold, but when they're dead, they can't do that. And without gold, AD carries are useless. But there are times when I see this all the time in like lower elo. If your AD carry is gonna die, like if they're guaranteed dead, don't go in and help them. And I mean, I do this all the time as a jungler, and I've been getting better at it. Like if my teammates are gonna die, especially with my friends, like I want to help you guys, but I know that I shouldn't because you made a bad mistake, and it just happens. Everyone makes mistakes, so you just have to. It's more important for at least one of you to survive.
Do you know how bad it feels? We were playing. Beaver, I hope your friends don't listen to this podcast, but it sounds like they might at this point. We were playing the other night with your friends. I won't call out who, and
call them out.
if you're serious, I will.
No, do it, because I gotta tell you about a game we played after. But go ahead.
All right, so I apologize if I hurt anyone's feelings, but I was playing with an AD carry the other night who as we were going in, he had a silver border, and I went, all right, well this guy may or may not be very good. And I was playing support, and I watched him just make a bunch of really bad trades and use his abilities improperly, and just didn't respect the fact that he had a blitzcrank in lane with him. And I was trying to carry the lane, like I'm landing decent hooks or this and that. But there was a point in there where he made a bad engage, and I just said, "Fuck it, I'm out. See ya." And I turned around and walked away, and I felt terrible. I felt awful for doing it. But I'm I'm not going in here. I'm not giving the team a kill. You fucking dashed into this.
And that's fine. And that's a great thing. That happens all the time in solo queue. You're like, I don't. And just because you have loyalties to someone doesn't mean you should make decisions based on emotion.
Yeah, but it's hard, right? If you're playing support,
it is hard, but it's something everyone has to work on. In real life too. Making decisions on emotion can be dangerous.
God, how many podcasts and conversations have we had about that? Trust me, a lot.
Tons. But yeah, I don't know. By you being alive, you can accomplish so much more. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but
yeah, that's bad.
But I mean, like if
with more champions on the map,
let's just go for a classic example. Like it's a 2v2. The enemy AD carry gets hooked by blitzcrank and knocked up. They don't have flash. They're dead. So you can just give up the tower and then roam mid and try to get a gank off and maybe get a kill and then push down their tower. So now you've theoretically evened out the playing field because you've got 2 people and 1 kill pushing down a tower, and so do they.
Right.
So that you just have to make trade-offs.
That was the same game.
I'm glad you said roam mid as opposed to stand and watch your tower die.
Don't do that.
A lot of people do.
Just don't waste your time, or even get deep wards, and then maybe your jungler can use that by diving top because he sees their jungler. Anything except give up something that you can't defend.
Like I agree with everything said there. I'll observe that like it can be hard to have the presence of mind to say I gotta I gotta just back off and everything, and this is gonna fall and I can go somewhere else and do something. A lot of times I end up like just backing off and recalling because we probably just had some type of protracted trade or exchange or something, and so I'm not even in like reasonable shape to go do something meaningful somewhere else. But it can't, because end of the day you still want to try and do something to save that tower, and so you need to sort of develop that instinct or have the presence of mind to just know like I can do nothing here. Time to reallocate my resources and focus my attention elsewhere.
For the sake of the conversation, Dom, let's pretend for the sake of the conversation, we're playing a poke or engage support. We're not playing Soraka. We're not playing Sonat level 6, right? Mm-hmm. We're playing Morgana, Karma, Leota, Alistar, Rakan, whatever it is. The presence of a support at that tower, I know you know this, sometimes the presence of the support at that tower when the enemy kind of understands back timers is enough to save that tower alone by you just kind of standing there. Right? And I know it's not every time, but like if you play up enough, what is it? Taking a step back, we're talking about while we're in lane. There are times where you can actually, as a support, kind of fake out that you're going to engage. Blitzcrank is so easy with this one. You can kind of walk up and look like you're going to throw a hook and never throw a hook, and that forces people to be scared. If you can get that mentality played in lane at any point in time where they think you're going to engage or use a Q as Karma or a Morgana bind or whatever it is, you can use that mental game around a tower or at any point in time in the laning phase to force people to back off because they'll suddenly go, oh shit, the jungler is going to be here to save the tower. Oh shit, the AD carry's here, right? So
it depends on the support because like in that same vein, Tom Kench is never going to do anything. Like they know even if the jungler comes and everything, they know Tom Kench doesn't have enough by himself to actually save that tower.
Sure.
Even with the jungler there, if it's a a 3v1 or something like that, or even 2v1. The jungler can come and maybe save the tower, but Tom Kench isn't going to be the one who was the difference maker there. At best, he's just going to save the jungler. Braum, meanwhile, while he doesn't have the ability to really pick a fight in the same way that Alistar or Leona might, his shield blocks blocks caster minion attacks, and also AD carry attacks. And so you can raise that shield and just walk and position yourself basically between the tower and the minions and block a lot of damage. And yes, you're probably going to eat some poke, but you know what that shield that you've raised does? It blocks a lot of the damage coming at you anyway, and then you can usually hop back to minions. I've played plenty of games where that was enough to keep my tower standing for a little bit longer.
I'm telling you guys out there, playing support, use your body. Use your presence as a way to deter the enemy team from doing whatever it is they want to do at that point. Just walking up a couple Teemos further through the lane bush, jumping into the lane brush and using that as putting a stake down in there and saying, this is mine now. Playing the lane toward what you want to do and having some confidence in your play is going to force the enemy to back off, and you're going to have a better time playing support.
And make sure when you're playing supports that aren't necessarily high damage dealing in the early skirmishes, please auto attack the enemy characters because it deals a lot of damage, especially when you add them up. If you get to squeeze in 5 auto attacks on a Nami, that could be like 200 damage.
There's value to this will get into a different point. There is sometimes value in using your abilities, especially around level 1 and 2. Not flat, not a heavy hard flash engage, something like that, but just going up and pulverizing or throwing the snare and getting the stun combo. And even if you can't kill them at all, there's value to doing that because you're asserting your presence and you're showing the enemy team, you know what, I am not afraid to do something to you if you get too close. Even if I know I can't, I'm not afraid, and you better be prepared for that, because that will often put your opponents on the back foot, and it will make them sort of respect your presence a little bit more. And that kind of gets into the next point, which is you need to understand how to read your opponents and also your lane partner.
Yeah, it's true. Some AD carries are super passive, like me, and some are far more. And that's just because I'm bad at AD carry. But there are a lot of people out there like that too. It's like the farm, and that's fine. But there are also people who like to be aggro, super aggro, and it could be on the same champion. You can have Vaynes who just farm, or you can have Vaynes who just fight 24/7. Doesn't mean one's better than the other. They're just different play styles. So Dom, you're totally right there.
And you need to read that, because if you're not on the same wavelength as your AD carry, you're going to have a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. If he or she is just really cautious and is playing back the entire time, it's not you gotta put a little bit of a zoning effort down, but you can't put yourself in harm's way for the entire laning phase, because by the time it comes time to do something, you're not going to have the health to support any of your actions, or you'll die before that time even came.
Why don't we talk a little about vision as well? We spent quite a bit of time on zoning and using. Let's punch.
I had one more topic to say on that. I was just trying to phrase it in my mind. So before you assume the tendencies of your AD carry, it does pay to actually to give an engage or a trade an attempt just to see how quickly they follow up, because you will have some AD carries that will focus on farming, and you'll assume that they're passive, but maybe it's just their play style to rely on the support to engage, and they're looking for that. And if they're really If they're really fast on following up, really fast on following up on that engage from you as the support, then they can turn into very valuable engage partners.
That's one of the reasons I like trying to go for sort of early ability usage. Like go in, get a combo down, and then run into the brush, because odds are good they warded the far brush on the side of the lane. So if you can get into the near brush, you're going to drop a lot of the minion aggro, and suddenly the AD carry can't auto attack you. And at level 2, auto attacks are, unless you're fighting Ezreal, auto attacks are really all that the enemy has. And so yes, you're going to eat some damage for that, but you should have enough time to regenerate that health that it doesn't end up being meaningful. And you can learn a lot about what your AD carry is going to do in the process.
Yeah, early ability usage is what you should do in every lane, just to get a feel for what your opponent's going to do, and in bot lane what your ally is going to do. It's something that first couple levels you're always trying to learn to see what you're up against.
To transition this in division not very smoothly, my favorite ward as a support is and there's the 2 bushes on the bot lane. You try to get your ward as deep as you can in the far bush, the one opposite you, so that your top laner can come down and help you. And yes, this may not happen in silver and bronze. Your top laners may not help you, but if you're playing support well and you're climbing, the higher you get in elos, the more map awareness your top laners will have, and eventually you'll get to an elo where if you're getting pressed in and your top laner has an advantage or even is behind, he'll just come down and goon squad bot with you, and that's a good way to push objectives after getting multiple kills just through a numbers advantage. So always look for that ward. I would say post like 6 or 7 minutes, because that's when top laners maybe have their ultimates and can start to influence the game. Would you agree, Punchy? Are you always someone who's looking bot? I know I play usually jungle top duo or something, and he's always looking bot for those wards, and he loves supports that stick them in the back bush just to get free kills.
Do keep an eye. Yeah, whenever there's a ward far out that I can teleport to, I always take note of that. It always stands out to me. It just so happens that doesn't happen very often in the games that I play, but when they do,
that's why I'm suggesting it's a thing that supports can do. And it's like what we talked about last week with the jungle episode. You're creating opportunities for your teammates to make plays, and that's a really simple one that you can do in the early game.
In defense of the supports who don't always get that ward down there,
it can be hard.
It's very hard sometimes.
Where that ward in the far brush and everything, the one you have, even if it's as close to your side of the map as possible, sometimes that's just the ward you could get, and you're getting it because like, hey, they're pushing up, maybe we can make something happen. I know this isn't ideal, but I know I'm going to want vision there, and so that's the best I could do. Sorry, team.
But yeah,
and it's not always as a top laner. It's not always bot lane's fault, right? Sometimes I do get a ward down there, but sometimes the stars have to align where maybe I don't have teleport up, or maybe I'm just not in a good position to go down there right now because I don't have any lane control.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that got to add up before you can actually coordinate with your bot lane to teleport gank down there.
But the overall point being that teleport on your top laner or mid laner at times is something that you should have on your mind. Come into those mid to early game skirmishes, and a good time to get that ward in, even if you're behind. If the enemy has backed because they shoved you in, then you shove them in, and before you back, you can drop a deep ward. That's a good time to do it.
And on that note, that's also why it's really important to try and deny those lane wards, because they're at some level your opponent's trying to set up a teleport gank.
Yes.
And if you are denying those wards over and over again, you are making that more difficult for them to really pull off. They either have to get the minion wave into a specifically, a key position, or it's just not going to happen, and you've saved yourself a lot of aggravation.
Deep wards supports deep wards.
My favorite ward right now,
the Dom ward,
is only when I'm on red side. And it's when I get to walk into Dragon Pit and throw a ward over the wall, basically right on top of the blast cone. Junglers never ever sweep there. Control wards that get placed by mid laners or junglers very rarely are positioned such that they're going to catch that ward, and you will catch so much traffic coming down your lane from right there.
So I heard someone talking about that, a Masters player talking about that ward, specifically saying people should ward that spot, not just supports. So it sounds like people are slowly getting hip to that spot. I don't know how long that trickle-down effect's going to take, but it sounds like people are starting to get hip to that ward spot. But you should use it while you can. Even then, you should still use it, because if a jungler is taking a moment to stop and clear that ward because they want to know if they're getting caught or not, that means that your ward has done its job. So supports out there, if your ward catches even one person walking through it, your ward has done its job.
If your ward catches 0 people, you still know, hey, nobody came through here and everything, so from this angle, we are safe.
And if you're worried about, if you're scared about going into the enemy's jungle, obviously if you see the jungle on the other side of the map, that's a good time to do it. But a great time to do it is if your mid laner and your lane have pressure on them, so you're shoving both the lanes under tower. That means technically your team owns their bot side of the jungle, so your jungler is probably also bot side. That's a good time to invade with your jungler if you can. But typically when both your lanes are shoved in, you'll get support before the enemy does. So if you end up in a skirmish with that enemy jungler, for whatever reason, you should have backup. So that's a good time to look for those deeper wards.
Roaming is really, really tricky to do. It is, if you understand it and you can do it well, it is a good way to climb, but it is contingent on your,
game knowledge.
You need but you also need your AD carry to be cognizant of the fact that you're roaming. If you roam mid and get a kill, that's great, but if your AD carry wasn't paying attention and dies, now it's net neutral.
Yeah, a lot of AD carries, when their support leaves, they assume they're just warding and they'll be back really quickly. So I'm not saying it's not their fault, because it certainly is. They need to pay attention when their support is actually going somewhere else and pay attention to the minimap. But it pays to keep one eye on your AD carry to make sure they're not doing something stupid while you're off going.
Okay, so
being helpful somewhere else.
From an AD carry standpoint, Dom and I had a discussion about this. It was probably a year ago at this point, if not 6 months.
We've had a lot of discussions.
We have. Unfortunately, we can't have as many as we used to. I'm very upset about that, but still. That's not here or there. That's not for the listeners. We had a discussion about this because I got really mad at him for continually leaving the lane and me dying. And the discussion, it came back to being my fault more than less. Well, we came to an agreement, right? Where, one, I'd pay more attention when Dom would leave, and two, Dom would stop leaving as often as he did. And it ended up working out in the long run, where now I recognize when Dom is gone and I'm not dying when he leaves the lane. But with that said, you have to, as a support, you can't leave the lane for an abnormal amount of time. The amount of time, if you're leaving, let's say you leave from base and you're like, I'm gonna go drop a deep ward in the enemy jungle. That's what you should do and get back to lane, because as an AD carry, from AD carry perspective, that's what I expect you to do if you're walking over there. I don't expect you, unless a skirmish breaks out, to drop a ward, walk mid, go back to the jungle, and then eventually make your way back bot, right? I expect you to drop that ward and come there unless something weird breaks out in between. And I understand that can happen. But I just want other people out there to understand that from the other perspective, that, that's kind of what we're expecting you to do when when we're playing around that.
It's also...
Well, it's a 2v1. Whenever the support is not there and the enemy support is, it's a 2v1. It's just simple that the AD carry is going to be at a disadvantage if the support roams at a poor time.
Disadvantages are fine. As an AD carry, I understand there will be times where I could potentially.
I don't think they are so fine. If the support leaves at a poor time,
okay.
I
understand what you're trying to get here.
So it's really
the problem is the AD carry can't really do anything for some matchups, right? They just end up losing farm in the worst case scenario and falling behind. Well, I guess dying in the worst case scenario. But even if they play their best in some matchups, they just have to stay back and lose farm and get a goal disadvantage.
It's really easy to look at the map and think this is a good time for me to roam, and end up it being a bad time for you to roam as far as your lane dynamic is concerned. If you roam at level 5 and you come back and your opponent has hit level 6, you are screwed for a while now, because they have ultimates, and even if your AD carry has an ultimate, because he or she hit 6, you don't have that. And so if you're Morgana without the ultimate, like, that's a huge fucking deal. If you're Alistar without the ultimate, that's a huge fucking deal. If you're Karma and you didn't hit level 6, that's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah, but
she's the lone exception to that rule.
So low risk roaming in the bot lane is the exact same as low risk roaming in the mid lane. It's just like textbook roam is when you shove the lane in, so your minions have crashed into their tower. Now they can't see you because of Fog of War, so you can start making your way mid, and if you see something on, you can go for it. And if you don't, you can just make your way bot when the minions crash again, and you've lost nothing because there's no experience to be gained. Sure, you may have missed out on some poke under tower, but then again, you've created pressure on mid lane by just not being in your lane, whether it's in sitting in the bush 10 pixels away or whether you're actually on your way there.
That's 10 Teemos away. I want you to make sure to use Teemos, not pixels.
10 Teemos? I'm sorry. So I have a...
There's nothing more infuriating than like being pushed up to the enemy tower and then looking at mid and seeing the same thing is happening. It's like, oh good, so I'm just going to stand here with my thumb in my ass, I guess, because I'll try and drop a ward, but if my trinket's on cooldown or I'm out of sightstone charges and everything, I guess I'm hanging out here, because what else am I going to do?
So can we talk about abandoning your AD carry, like fully abandon, like giving up hope on them? Does it ever happen? Do you ever give up hope, Dom?
It's one of those things where, like, I understand where you're coming from, and from a seasoned player, I understand why it can happen, but it's not something I want to teach people to do or to let people know it's even okay to do, because... Yes, you give a mouse a cookie, it's going to ask for a glass of milk. That's all I'm saying.
Rare that you ever.
No. If you give a mouse a cookie, it's going to ask for a glass of milk. We're just not teaching that on this show.
We don't have to.
The only time I would ever do
I've only ever done it twice.
The only times I would do it are because my AD carry says go roam. Like, we lost tower. And, like, we lost it really early, and the AD's just like, go roam. I will just deal with this nonsense by myself. They know how to freeze and do all that type of stuff, and so that the enemy team can't extend up. And so at that point, it's just wasted effort for me to be in bot lane.
Yeah. One of the 2 times that I did it, my AD carry had something like, 600 ping, and he was like, just leave me. I'm a lost cause. And he thought the game was lost, but the game wasn't lost because... I was like, I'm going to blink blitzcrank, buy some Mobies, get my teammates ahead. And that's what we did. We just ran around the map like a second jungler, ganking lanes. And it worked in that case, but that was turning a terrible situation into one that was salvageable. And that's more about adaptability than anything. But yeah, abandoning. I was just poking to see if you guys would ever do something like that.
No, sure, but...
Would that ever happen before the tower goes down, though? Is what I'm thinking, because a common thing to do after your tower goes down is to support to roam anyways. I don't know if I've been in a game where it's been so bad that the support has abandoned the AD carry before the bottom lane tower went down.
I bring it up because I put AD carry as my secondary just because I'm kind of most familiar with that lane dynamic at this point, and I'm not going to be like any better or worse at AD carry than I really would be at mid lane anyway. But I've played with a number of support, like our tower falls, and I played with a number of supports who just keep hanging out in lane. And I type in chat, "Go roam." You're like, we're not.
What are you doing?
Go roam. Go do something else. I don't need you down here. Like this doesn't matter anymore. Go roam. And they just keep hanging out. So it seems like common sense to us that, hey, the tower falls. It's time for the support to roam. But that's not what that's not reality.
Dude, I mean, I pretty much only play with Dom as support, right? Because I don't play AD carry outs. I haven't played solo queue as AD carry this season, really. And if our tower falls, I never expect to see Dom again.
So
he's gone.
Yeah, if our tower,
if we take the tower, you're also not going to see me again.
Yeah,
so
no.
I was just gonna say, like, that happens. Most people like understand that when you lose your tower, the AD carry just soaks up the XP bot, and the support sort of just helps the team at that point. But let's talk about like when you guys get the first tower bot lane.
I expect to never see him again, unless you and he are in mid.
Both of you, like as an AD carry duo. What do you do when you get the tower? Say it's first blood or second blood, but
you're top side
position.
Ideally, you rotate top and top goes bot.
But you do not stay in bot lane. that's what you should not do. You should send your top laner down there.
Right. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's something that's just like basic game knowledge and it's something that more people can work on because I see it all the time. Like you guys get the bot lane and it's like, oh, it's 10 minutes. I guess we'll just go bot because everyone's in their lanes. It's laning phase still. It's not laning phase anymore. You just knock down the tower, go mid, go top.
It's
Don't
really
go there
frustrating
again.
when top
You-
laners don't pick up on that and they keep running top because it's like, okay, now what the fuck am I supposed to do? So I guess I'll go and support the top laner and the AD carry will go and be exposed bot lane and everything, but they're not going to be able to deal with that shit because they don't have a level advantage. So,
But I would like to say, even if your top laner doesn't know what's going on, he just chills out with you in the top lane, you're still getting objectives and pushing your advantage. So even though they lose experience, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about is getting objectives. So if they don't know to go bot lane, then that's fine. You're just going to go get to pick up that CS as well. But basically what I'm saying is if you go bot after you've knocked down their tower, you push up because there's nothing to push your minions back, and then you put a huge target on you back to their jungler or mid laner or top laner. You're just going to get killed, and then you're going to throw. And that's one of the reasons I see bot lanes throw their leads all the time. So as a support, make sure to get out of there.
because like think of the line of scrimmage. There's a. I basically use the towers as the line of scrimmage that you're not supposed to cross, or once you cross them, you're in a danger zone. Well, once you take that first tower and everything, there isn't enough vision available from the rest of the team to cover the uncharted like the unsafe territory, and so that's why it's so dangerous to go back bot lane and then push up really hard.
Yep.
I want to add an asterisk to that, but
Do
I
it.
don't have to.
What's your asterisk?
Put it in.
The only time you'd stay bot lane is when you have such a huge advantage that you could handle a jungle gang.
Yeah, that you want them to come. Like if you're
Right.
a 7-0
You're
Draven with
taking
Alistar,
pressure for your team.
You want them to come to your lane.
Yes.
That is
You want the jungler to come. You want their mid laner to come. You're giving the rest of your team an advantage by forcing the enemy team to spend more resources bot lane to deal with you, and you can handle it because you're so far ahead.
But by that same
That is-
point, you could just take that power anywhere on the map and assert it onto any player. Like it doesn't have like the fact that their bot lane is
Good.
probably 0-5 at this point. They're not worth gold anymore. So why don't you go mid and farm them? That's my suggestion. Like the strategy works both ways, but yeah.
So. Last point.
So.
Because we've probably we haven't hit everything support. An hour's not enough
That's a
time
lot.
to talk about
not
support.
enough.
It wasn't for top. It wasn't for jungle.
Yeah, I think the last thing is just team fighting as a support because that's probably the hardest role to team fight in because it's really hard to understand what you need to be doing. But is the general consensus to save your? Well, I guess now is not save your carry because your carry is not really carrying. Is it save the person doing damage? Or bolster?
My attitude is always like keep
bolster the person doing damage. How about that?
keep the best player on the team alive, and that's usually the most fed person. So if your Katarina tore up laning phase and everything, and she's way out in front of the rest of the team on both sides and everything, keep her alive. Your AD carry is going to be pissed about it, but your Katarina is going to be the one that wins you the game. At that, based on all the evidence you have at that point. That tends to be my attitude when you're playing in a coordinated or like a more organized group. You will know certain player strengths and everything, and so even if somebody is really far out in front, like, hey, I should still give this other player my attention because they will make meaningful contributions.
Sure.
But in solo
at mercy.
just keep the best player alive.
Easy.
But in team fighting, I think one thing that a lot of low MMR support players don't do is drop down combat wards, as I like to call them.
Yes.
I didn't even really pick up on this until I went through a stint where I was playing a lot of AD carry, but just the number of times where I lost vision on certain areas where I critically needed it. Not even like wanted it, like I critically needed it in order to continue getting abilities and auto attacks off.
Mm-hmm.
Made me realize just how important it was to drop a sightstone down in brush that opponents were, reeling back towards or they looked like they were going towards. Just like having your Sightstone charges available is really important. And so if you go, if you hit a point where you're throwing a bunch of scouting wards down, that's good. Immediately get back to base if you can, so that you can refill your Sightstone and drop down those combat wards.
Yes. I was doing my best evangelical impression during that without sounding annoying as I could. But
don't ever hesitate to just throw a control ward in that brush. If it's going to get you vision that you need, just do it. Like, yes, that ward's going to die at some point, but it doesn't matter because it got you the vision that you needed when you needed it.
Also, you should have 3 in your inventory, so it shouldn't matter.
Yeah, and I do. I always have 3. I'm always walking around with 3 stack.
Yeah, anybody out there, that doesn't just go for supports, 80 carries, top laners, whatever. Everybody. You know what? If I see 4 wards drop into a bush as we're fighting, I'm okay with that while we're fighting, because that means everybody's on the same page and trying to provide vision. Because you're right, Dom. Even in bottom lane, because people use those bushes to drop aggro, and dropping that momentary wind up for my auto attack could have been the make or break for a kill when we're doing a trade down there. So having those wards drop in the bush before we lose vision is so amazing in such a forward-thinking support play that more supports need to adopt. Just understanding that vision needs to be supplied throughout all moments of team fights.
And for 80 carries, that's why it's so important for you to switch to blue trinkets. I understand maybe the back and forth. Oh, well, we have an invisible trinket and or an invisible ward and everything, and that's going to provide us more scouting. And yes, that is valuable. But once you get into a fight, you're going to have the hardest time out of anybody getting to that brush to drop that ward.
Right. Yeah,
but the blue ward, you can just throw that in there, and even if they kill it right away, it still gives you that mini clairvoyance, so you get the vision that you need.
Yeah, I find it hard. I'll be honest, at this point in the game, I find it hard to use that blue ward properly. If I'm not using that blue ward to look for a Baron or a Dragon, the only other times I'm using it is to get vision while we're fighting. Or I'm trying to just quickly look for an area.
Flanking assassins, stuff like that.
It's really hard to drop that and use that ward for anything other than a clairvoyance at this point, where it's just momentary vision, because the likelihood of it dying is super high. I wish we had more time. I mean, it's practically 8 o'clock at this point, or the hour at this point, and we've talked pretty in depth about supports, and we could always wrap back around to every single one of these topics and talk about them again later. But Dom, I think you did a really good job throwing this document together, and I hope everybody else out there.
Beaver pushed the topic and everything, so credit where it's due there. Like I was at my
Dog
wit's
Wizard
end
Dom,
here, so.
come on. Take some credit. This thing's pretty sweet. And it's well.
One day,
topics. I think
one day I'll bring justice to the marksman. I swear.
I don't know. I think we'll have a good conversation about that whenever we got to do it.
Yeah, so people out there also listening, I have this week seems to be tons of announcements, but the next couple weeks are going to be kind of janky when it comes to how many episodes we have, because Christmas is coming up in 11 days or so, and that week, I think the podcast, because Christmas is on a Monday, which is a recording day, and then we have that Wednesday. I guess technically we record on that Wednesday. We're definitely not recording on Christmas Day. There's no way in hell you could get us to record on Christmas Day. So there'll be one podcast that week, maybe. And if not, it might be a late podcast, because that's assuming people can show up on the 27th.
I have that entire week off from work, so I'll be here.
I mean, I'll be here too. I just don't know who else. Did they celebrate Christmas in Canada?
No, we don't believe in that.
All right.
Nope.
Wow, you were funny in 2001.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I try.
And maybe we try and get that Meta Report podcast out by early January.
It has to come out January, because I just announced it tonight.
Yeah, no, but the season I believe starts on the 18th. I think. Don't quote me on that.
January
but it's middle of January. Maybe it's the 11th. Somewhere in there. It's in the middle. So we'll try and get it out before, so you guys can have an idea of what the meta is before you just do placements.
Yeah, I really hope you guys enjoy that new Patreon podcast. It's not going to be just Meta Report. It's going to be Meta Report /
there'll be other things
stuff. So
for sure.
We just some justification for that, since I meant to say it earlier, is that it's hard. It's becoming, with the number of champions in the game, we realize that if we kept doing 2 a month, eventually we're going to hit the end of it. Then we have nothing to give you at $10 a month. So if we drop it back to If we drop back to 1, we at least extend the amount of time that Patreon can go on for. But we wanted to give you something else for your money as well.
Plus, you buy Riot some time to release new champions, rework some,
There are
that Urgot champions like now is kind of dated.
Yeah, there's that too. There's 150 plus champions in this game, right? If I remember correctly, and we're at 58 champions like podcasts, and I recorded 4 in the last week. Like, it's going to be pretty easy to push out, 2 a month, 24 more champion selects. We pretty much reach the end of it by the end of the year, so we'll see.
Find a Zoe main.
A Zoe main, that's right, a Zoe main. All right, anyway.
And I'm gonna disband the Four Words podcast if they keep that up.
Same. All right, guys, that's it. That's episode 495 of the Trinity Force podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Dom did a really good job putting this document together. We talked quite a bit about supports tonight. We'll come back around for more supports, top lane, jungle, mid, and 80 carry discussion in the future. Guys, thank you so much for listening to us, and we will see you on Monday. Peace.
Later.
We'll see you sometime. See ya.